This conference will now be recorded.
So just to start off, I want to welcome everybody. I'm sure I'll have a few more people jump on. And as always, just want to say thanks for continuing to support us. I think we're all bummed that we can't meet in person, but this is the next best thing, as they say. So, so before introducing our panelists, you know, usually what we'll do is just take a quick peek at some events that are coming up and just a couple of tips. So if your mic is on at this point and you are not a panelist, you can turn your mic off, which would be helpful. And we will have time for all kinds of questions towards the end of our discussion. And if you do want to get in touch with me or poke a question in for one of our panelists, feel free to use the chat. We are recording our event, which is advocating for UX within complex organizations. And again, I'll introduce everyone in a moment. But a couple of good events, if folks want to sign up or investigate these, feel free. So the IXDA Indianapolis has a really interesting event that is going on tomorrow night, and it's it seems like the focus of the event is really to just call out design issues. I mean, it's called Navigating Whiteness in Product Design, which I think is certainly an intriguing title for this. And I think it's it sounds like it would be a great discussion. I think that all of us are want to see more representation from all sorts of folks getting into UX. So I certainly sounds like a great discussion tomorrow for that topic. Another topic which is next week, so IIT, so the folks who are in Chicago will probably know IIT. It's the Institute of Design. They've partnered with us on many events. They always do a great job of pulling together these events. So this is looks like more of a panel discussion, talking about a whole bunch of different things that influence behavioral design. So again, looks like this is on Eventbrite, not Meetup. So if you just go on Eventbrite and you type this in, you will find it. That is next Wednesday, October 28th at 7 p.m. Central. This is it's a meetup group called Chicago IA/UX, and I think that they are running a separate design conference for 2 days through Blink. So this is a 2-day conference. It starts at 11. It seems like it's 2 days, 2 full days. I would investigate this. It looks like a great resource to sort of learn and talk about, collaboration, which is in part what we're going to talk about here tonight. So if you're interested, it's conveyux.com, and you can register and investigate a little bit more there. If you're new to IXDA, you can always get in touch with us through multiple resources, through Meetup, through Facebook. And then one thing I want to point out is on LinkedIn, I know that to a certain extent, our industry is hanging in there. I think that if anything, during this pandemic, people have gotten even more serious about digital. So that's kind of a good thing. And if you are new to the, to the group, I've been encouraging some recruiters to post jobs on our LinkedIn page. So, go there, be active, feel free to reach out to other folks. It's a great way to connect on LinkedIn, and that way you can sort of see people's backgrounds. If you are looking for a new gig, or you are a company that is looking for people to join your firm. And we'll have a couple of discussions about that in terms of just sort of hand raisers at the end of our conversation who are looking for people. We can actually, I think we actually do that up. Well, we used to do it up front, so we can do that towards the end, because I want to get to our discussion. Here are our fabulous 4 local leaders, so everyone can say hi. And with that, I will introduce our panelists for tonight, and we can start a discussion. So I'll just sort of give a quick bio of everybody. So we have Niketa Jhaveri. She is Vice President of User Experience at Flexera. She is a designer, strategist, and innovator with over 20 years experience managing global teams. I can tell you I know this because we've worked together. She's definitely passionate about driving high impact teams that really deliver solutions for a wide variety of industries and Fortune 500 companies. Her design is not just a department, but it's a muscle to use by cross-functional tuning them into seamless UX. So her leadership is, and again, I work with her, so her leadership is great. She really loves UX and helps to really get a cohesive message behind all the people who are in the team to point everybody in the right direction. So that is Niketa. Andrea Chernoff, who I've also worked with. I've actually, full disclosure, I've worked with everybody. So, so Andrea is based in New Jersey. She is senior manager of market research for Immunology at Mallinckrodt. Mallinckrodt is a pharmaceutical company, if you're not familiar with them. She is seasoned in market research, and she spent over 20 years in the pharmaceutical industry, working for a variety of different companies. She had the opportunity to work on a variety of prescription brands for more than a dozen therapeutic areas, which is pretty impressive. She's currently, as I said, at Mallinckrodt, focusing on rare diseases. She supports a number of autoimmune conditions that are difficult to pronounce, but I will let her fill you in on some of the things. It's multiple sclerosis, it's rheumatoid arthritis. We actually worked together on like a schizophrenia drug at one point. So all these things are, and Andrew's area of expertise is really understanding how to blend the user research into UX and understanding that sort of full range of, what is important to understand about the user and how to relate that back into communicating to them effectively. So Andrea went to Rutgers University and has an MBA in marketing from Fairleigh Dickinson. Vicente is with us tonight as well. Vicente is Senior Director of Digital Experience Design at Johnson & Johnson. He's a UX leader with extensive experience in healthcare, where he's built and led a variety of different design teams at CVS, at Medco / Express Scripts. He's also advised and consulted for multiple digital health startups. And he as well takes a holistic approach to design, always striving to really provide engaging and impactful experiences for the people that the design is communicating to. So that is our panel for today. So I'm going to stop sharing our screen here. And our active cameras on. So for tonight, what we wanted to focus on, big picture, was advocating for UX within complex organizations. And I think that it's sometimes, because we're in the industry, it sometimes seems so obvious that UX is important and the user should be at the center of everybody's attention. But there are people in marketing, in finance, in IT, programmers who they kind of stay in their lane, and it can be difficult to bring them along. In addition to senior leaders who maybe just focused on the numbers of things. And so I think big picture, what I wanted to talk about tonight and get our panel to talk about is their experiences in these bigger organizations, like Johnson and Johnson and GE Healthcare, uh, how you approach this issue, um, and what do you do? Not only talking about it, but taking action to bring people into the UX fold and get them excited. So I think that, I have some general questions, but it's more of a panel discussion. And I think the first thing is really just to take a step back and ask, each of the panelists kind of how the pandemic has impacted digital overall at your organization. So, maybe Vicente, if you want to start us off.
Sure. Thanks for having us, and excited to be part of this panel. So I hear a little bit of an echo, but I'm gonna talk through it. So hopefully you can hear me okay. So there's Exhibit A. How has digital impacted? We communicate a little bit differently. We have obstacles thrown our way. So I think on the one hand is how has it impacted us as human beings trying to work together, trying to get things done when suddenly we're not in the same space or traveling to other places. I have to say overall, maybe at least what my experience has been, we're actually faring pretty well. We've tried to accommodate for some of the things that we're missing, such as, and this might seem a little quirky, but so we're not, having those serendipitous meetings in the hallway. So one of the things we did, just for context, I work, our headquarters for design, J&J Design, is a global design organization within Johnson & Johnson, is in New York City and Chelsea. And there's over 100 designers in a few different disciplines in there. So it was a great family community. What we did a few months ago is someone came up with the idea to have something called In Line For, and they would set up meetings where they maybe invite 15, 20 people, and it was in line for the printer, in line for the bathroom, in line for the coffee machine, as a way to kind of bring just diverse disciplines and people together as a way to spark some conversations that are those kind of side water cooler conversations. So I think immediately people saw that there was something missing that we needed to account for. So I won't go. That's just one little example. But in terms of using these virtual channels, surprisingly productive and exhausting at the same time.
Yeah, that sounds great. I like that idea of creating these opportunities, digitally, to have people meet each other. I think that's a great idea. Yeah, Niketa, tell us a little bit about how it's impacted, digital where you are. And I know you're fairly new to the job that you're at. How difficult was it to sort of start and everyone's virtual? Tell us a little bit about that.
Interesting times, right? I know that Deloitte kind of coined a term called a case of acute disruption, right? It's not only just the patient health, but also it's a digital disruption happening in the industry. Mm-hmm. Yeah, funny enough, I changed jobs in the middle of the pandemic. That was an interesting process in itself, and making all the calls over the phone and making a decision like that also on the call. There's an echo somewhere, I don't know. But it was everything, the process was virtual. And I do have to say that I think in March, when the pandemic hit, I was at GE Healthcare, and I would say that some of the things were, I think everyone was in a panic mode. Like, people didn't know what to expect, how to react was a question mark. I don't know if you guys hear the echo, or I don't know if you heard it twice.
Yeah, there's a little bit of an echo, but we can hear you just fine.
Okay. So I think that GE Healthcare, the culture was different. Definitely, I'll explain to you the culture at Flexera. But GE Healthcare, the culture wasn't about video calls. It wasn't about. It was more about things we used to travel all over the world in order to meet, just to have a one and travel all over the world. So definitely there was a lot of panic at the time. I wouldn't say panic, but more of we don't know how to behave, we don't know how to meet, we don't know how to host some of the things. So, but I think eventually by in 1 or 2 months, I think it got better. At Flexera, when I joined, the company itself had a culture of always having a video call, making sure that we're connecting with each other on a regular basis, and already a norm kind of in July. So I think that, and Flexera itself, they are in a digital environment. So they work. Oh, there's echo gone. Thank you. The digital environment. So we are a digital company, and they actually provide services, digital products to other customers. So for us, for Flexera, it's actually even more challenging to have kind of communication with those customers, but actually even less challenging as far as technology is concerned, because you can actually connect with people online and don't have to do and travel there. So I would say that COVID and pandemic has impacted people, but I think people have been resilient. Companies have been resilient, and I think it has made its way into figuring it out, working through. I'll go into how we're working in UX is a little bit different, I would say. But as a company, I would say I think company has been very resilient to work over the change, and it's actually not bad. I'll hand over to Andrea.
Yeah, and Andrea, tell us about about your sort of transition and the past couple of months for you at your firm.
Yep. So when we all went into quarantine back in March, we kind of hit the brakes because a lot of our promotional materials were actually still hardcore. They weren't digital. So the marketing teams that I work on had to quickly move everything to their the iPad, so the reps can then use that to communicate with the doctors. But the other big issue that we were running into is that all the doctors' offices had closed down back in March, and reps weren't able to see their customers. So they had to figure out what was the best technology to communicate with them, whether it was through Zoom or WebEx or GoToMeeting or whatever. So we had to do market research and figure that all out across the country, and also adapt what the company was using with their technology. So there was a lot of things that we had to do in order to get the field up and running, or back up and running, to communicate with their customers. From a market research perspective, which is my world, it was great because now I have captive audiences. The HCPs are home, the patients are home, everybody's home. So they're more likely to participate in market research. So it really didn't change so much from the work that I do, but it definitely had impacted my company in many different ways.
Yeah, that's great. Again, I think we've all been through it. So and I think some companies reacted better than others. And I think a lot of folks look to sort of the digital leadership to say, no, this is not that hard. We can do market research via GoToMeeting and Zoom. We can do things and communicate effectively, digitally. May not be as fun, may not be as productive, but it's still productive, and you can still get things done. Let's talk about sort of, what Andrew started talking about was kind of the research area and the UX area, and what, how you presented and advocated during this time period to continue research efforts and, continue to focus on, on digital products and communication. So again, Niketa, you could start us off, and we could sort of jump in and you guys can jump in and sort of have a discussion about this topic. Because I think that's kind of the main crux of it is, how during this shift, you sort of get people and win them over.
So I think that I don't know if because of pandemic things have changed. I think we've always advocated for UX, and it always has been in a position where you have to advocate for UX and you have to kind of ask for a budget or ask for headcounts or ask for more resources, right? So I do not feel because of pandemic it has actually gotten less. I feel it's actually gotten more. And I'll tell you the reason behind it is because things are getting more digital than ever. If you look at many industries, Flexera has been always digital, but if you look at some of the other industries like food industry, grocery going online, and all of these things becoming digital, I think the need for digital transformation has increased, and that's why there's a need for user experience has increased. And companies, smaller companies, I'm not talking Fortune 500, even smaller companies, mid-sized companies have now, try to open up UX positions so that they can actually improve their digital footprint and improve their experiences for the users, because everything is going online and they have to do it, right? And as far as how to ask for those kind of, what are some of the best ways and how you advocate for that is a couple of things. One is showing them demonstrated predicted outcomes, like what are some of the outcomes you are going to produce, you're going to have, so that you can show those outcomes, and then turning those outcomes into a business value, because at the end of the day, every business wants to care about the market share, how they're going to improve their market share, what the bottom line is, and then measuring those results and showing the success, right? I think that showing them how UX can actually have a successful measurement and successful, some of the companies really understand through competition, and some of the companies understand through revenue. So you really have to understand the culture of the company you are in, try to figure out what that culture looks like, try to figure out how they're actually evaluating success, what does success mean for them, and incorporating some of those things into your UX KPIs or UX matrix is how you can potentially push for advocating for UX on a regular basis. So I think that's how it has worked for us. It has always worked for us in PE. And it's been an oldest trick, I would say. Any company you go to where you do not have a UX resources, you have to show them proven method that this is going to work versus this is not going to work, and this is what I need.
Yeah, I think that's a great example. I was going to say is, have kind of the baseline measurements and explaining ROI and KPIs. Has that changed at all during the pandemic, or is it pretty much the same for you guys?
So I would say, Niketa, you hit all the right points there. I think it's very much about showing value, talking about value. But I wanted to add to that is, I'm aware that I've been dealing at pretty large scale organizations, but it wasn't always that way, and I also didn't always have a team. I built a few different teams, and I've had to, in this field for a while, but I was also a team of one at one point. So if I think of the people that are hopefully with us today, there's probably a whole range. People that have been in large organizations or or freelancing or just starting out, right? The way I've always thought of it is, as a designer, whether I'm an individual or running a department or trying to sell this internally, I need to understand who I'm talking with, right? I think you mentioned, understand the culture or the mindset of what's important, what are the values of that company. It certainly makes a huge difference when the organization you're going into is already talking about it. So you're there to say, oh, how do I enable it? How do I make it? How do I show it? Because they're hungry for it. As an individual, if you're starting out, you're kind of advocating for yourself and your value and how you're going to help the team or whoever it is to go ahead and show how this makes a difference in somebody's life if we design it a certain way. So I would say that no matter how much perceived value you have or power you have within an organization, you always got to carry that that kind of battle cry that I'm there to, every step of the way, make show either in small ways, build relationships. While you have your, there's a long-term strategy, the big things you want to accomplish, but there are a lot of these small things that really do matter. You can find allies within an organization. It could be a certain team that has been pounding their head against the wall saying, like, I want to do this. And finally, oh, look, you do this, right? I've got a designer or a team that can actually help me achieve that. So go to those people. Talk to and know who the development teams are. There's so much power. You can come up with all the insights and ideas and concepts in the world, but if you don't have good partnership on the technology side, you're not gonna build it. It's not gonna be what you think it is. Understand if it's a marketing team, how they think of digital might be different from an R&D or product, digital product, or someone that's trying to launch a digital product. So, apply UX principles, insights, research to the environment you're going into. Learn, understand who those personas are and what's going to connect with the ultimate goal of furthering that vision of beginning to show and get that kind of traction. And don't despair, because you're going to fail. You're going to have your successes, and it's just moving forward and finding those pivots along the way, right? So, and sponsorship certainly helps from above. You have to have that, but that might be one lone voice, or it may actually be a whole corporate strategy that you're hopefully walking into.
Yeah, again, this is all really insightful. Andrea, I guess tell us, you're coming at this from a slightly different perspective, as someone who's doesn't have a background as a UX designer. I guess tell us, when you talk about advocating for UX, is it framed a little bit differently? Do you call it, we're advocating for the patient? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yep. So in market research, I'll typically work with my core team. So my core marketers, you work with the advertising agency that the marketing team is working with, and maybe some other departments within the organization. And the way I personally see myself advocating for the value that I bring to the organization is letting folks beyond my team that I'm working with hear the insights from our customers. And I'll give you a perfect example. We recently did, a few months ago, we did creative concept testing with patients. And this one patient, this was a patient that was on our treatment, and she started talking about how our drug changed her life. And this was a patient that had not to get too technical, but a disease with her kidney. That's serious stuff, dealing with your kidneys. And she went through her whole journey of getting diagnosed and treatments that she was on and that failed, and then she was put on our treatment. And we have a really extensive patient support program as well. Anyway, so we're testing these creative concepts, and through the 45-minute interview, she starts unaidedly talking about how the drug changed her life and how great the support team was, and the nurses, they bring so much value and they were so supportive. It was such a fabulous interview because everything she was saying about our product and our treatment and our support was all unaided. We didn't ask any questions about it. She just voluntarily offered it up. So I made sure I got that audio. And what I did was I sent that audio clip to the VP that I work with, people beyond the core team that I was working with, to share those insights. I sent it to a few of the VPs. I sent it to my boss's boss. And this is the way I can show the value that I'm bringing, is to share these customer insights with the people higher up, the people that don't get to listen to the interviews day in and day out like I do. And that's how I advocate because they see the value that I'm bringing, and then I can push to do additional projects. So that's just one example.
I want to add to that, Lon. Andrea, so one of the story I have to tell about is GE Healthcare, where one of my colleague, his name is Doug, and he actually he was in charge of designing MRI machines. And I don't know how many of you go into MRI machines, but it's a terrible experience. It's a if you're claustrophobic, the machine is right here, you feel like you're in a coffin. So kind of, it's not a great experience. And put a 5-year-old or a 10-year-old who has these, whatever the condition may be, and if they have to get an MRI done, it's a terrible experience for them. You can't drug them, you can't put Benadryl because you have to stay still, so they can't be moved. So there's nothing you could do. Doug actually researched a lot throughout what that experience looks like for a child. And what he did is, instead of creating a regular MRI machine, he created an experience for the children where he created different themes of MRI machines, where he shows there's a fishes in the water, or there is a pirate theme, like you're on a boat of an MRI machine, and they would incentivize children to say, if you stay here for a little bit longer, you get points added. So it made more of a gamification. And there's an awesome TED Talk on this one. So if anybody's interested, can go to a TED Talk and just type in GE Healthcare Doug DX. And he shares a very compelling story. Then I'm giving you a very short version, and he has an amazing TED Talk there. But the point to Andrea's point about showing the value to the stakeholder by doing the experiments like this actually adds a lot to not only what you as a user experience department or a marketing department you're doing, but also additional to what users really want and what they need. And by doing these experiments or getting the quotation, in this case, he, of course, Doug had children's videos showing how amazing before and after of it, someone is crying versus he's happy. That's a clear definition of saying, oh, this is absolutely a better user experience. So I think definitely adding that kind of value prop with your message makes it very compelling.
Yeah, it sounds great. I think Sam had chimed in with a question. So Sam, if you have a question.
Yeah, I'll jump in here real quick. This is great so far. Thanks, guys. One of the questions I'm always curious about is when we talk about UX and the role, advocating for UX in a large organization, there's sort of different flavors of UX. And so I think that larger organizations, there may be leadership that, well, sure, I know I need a wireframe. I know I need, some of these things that I know I need to know what to build, but advocating for the research. And Andrea, what you were sort of talking about was a great sort of realization that, in fact, the pandemic is in some way good because it routes everything through digital. So we're getting all of that voice of customer feedback. But I think what I'd love to hear you guys talk a little bit about is perhaps for maybe those less mature organizations where UX means wireframes, turning the corner and advocating for the true user-centered research, aspect of it to inform those designs and not just it be voice of leadership driving whatever those designs are. I think it'd be interesting to hear you guys talk a little bit about your experiences about bridging the divide between that sort of tactical UX and research and insight-driven UX. And I'm just going to pick Vicente because he's over on my left, and we're just going to go left to right. Thanks, guys.
I wanted to jump in there because I think just like you can say, there's a lot of UX, and you can kind of spread that out. There's also a lot of research, a lot of ways of deriving insights, right? Pulling, and there's also this is the part where I don't know if I'm walking on some eggshells here, but there's also all the insights and all the research doesn't automatically create the designs or tell you exactly what to do. So there's a bit of the art and science here, and how do you interpret this and how do you turn it into something else. So I get anxious when I hear about the wireframe stuff, because even that's a tool of the means to an end. So when I hear a lot of, and this is not pointed at you, but when there's that, same with visual design, let's just make it look good, or just give me the wires, we'll that's what we're going to build. this is why I keep throwing the word holistic in there. So regardless of the size of the organization or the maturity, if you're the UX person that is pigeonholed into I need wireframes, that's when you step up and you say, well, I'm not just going to take requirements and do this, right? This is where my role is to say, well, I need to understand more. I need to build that empathy. I need to figure out both who the person is and what the business get, like bring it all together. So that's where I want to steer it towards that. I don't know if it answers exactly where because you mentioned maybe a smaller or maybe a less mature organization, maybe.
Yeah, you're singing my song. I love what you're saying. I think it's that we all have the realization that we have these organizations, either as consultants or as internals,
yep,
where you walk in there and you recognize where you stand and where the maturity level stands.
But then in terms of the at J&J Design, well, I lead digital experience. So the interaction design, the user experience design, visual, even CGI, right? So if it's digital and it's got some kind of, there's an experience somewhere, we're involved. But my peers run, there's another team called Insights and Experience Strategy. But J&J also has market research. They've got all sorts of insights and research of all types that come into play. This team comes from the IDEO, design thinking, ethnographic, really understanding the qualitative, and it really, what I'm blown away by is how that can turn into, from a business perspective, right? The additional value, these blueprints, these strategic ways of looking into the future where there are aspects where it's very, very digital, but there might be some things that actually are physical, right? That's the holistic thing.
Multi-channel roadmaps. Yeah.
Absolutely, right? But so what I want to get away from is that kind of short order cooking direct line to say, well, we have this data, we want this, build it, and they'll code it, right?
Well, I guess I'm driving at what the crux of that is. Like, how do you turn that corner? Because I agree with you. Like we've got to get out of that tactical pigeonhole. And trust me, a lot of the times it's relationships. You got to know who you're working and what you're doing, what you're, who you're sort of beseeching for whatever requirements. But yeah.
Well, I think you're probably going to have to do a little bit of one if that's in order to get to the other. You can't fight every single battle because you're not going to be there for the next one. So this is a little bit, it's not selling out at all, because there are some things that if you're a dedicated designer or an insights, a UX professional, you can ring out what to do the right thing and not, if it's not right, if it's not feeling right, and you can have a conversation, but it's not like, trust me, I'm the expert. You've got to bring them around and start thinking about who this is going to touch. We'll get, it'll deliver your business goals. It'll be scalable, whatever that is, from a technology perspective. I can bring that in there, but let's figure this out, because there's a ton of different ways of doing it, but a few are better than a whole bunch of others that are not good at all. So, I would be careful how you get the message there, so you don't come across as being arrogant. Everyone's got a perspective. I don't have all the information, and there is value in getting into a conversation to understand, well, why is it that you're asking me to give you the wires for, just follow these requirements? Can we go a little deeper in this? I want to hear so interview that person rather than challenge what they're asking you to do, right? That's what
absolutely.
To add to that, Sam, I think it's more about data-based decisions at the end of the day, right? It's how if the company's culture is not taking decisions through data, so how do you enable so that they do start making decisions based on the data? Mm-hmm. I think that if the UX organization is immature in a company, which may look like one designer or two designers, they might hire someone who's a generalist. And then what they would do is they would just say, okay, now you do everything. You do research, you do design, you do everything. And then what happens there is that guy is so buried that they can't execute on anything good. There's no quality coming out of there, right? And also they don't. I don't.
The overworked unicorn.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
And then you are not really doing database decisions, and that's where the UX maturity kind of the company fails, because there is no understanding of the UX maturity. So in that case, my suggestion would be for a smaller company is for the designers to actually come up with a strategy on creating those database decisions, whether it's qualitative, whether it's quantitative, and show those decisions, show those values and your results to the organization and ask for buy-in for a researcher. And that's how you get them to hook, and that's how the maturity of the organization will move on from whatever level you are on right now.
Absolutely. The axiom of if you look around the room and wonder who's doing it and there's nobody there, it's you, is the is the sort of the answer there. And Andrea, I definitely want to hear from you as well. Thank you, Niketa.
Yeah, so I'm coming from a completely different perspective here, but when it comes to market research, everything isn't an ends to a means, and it's really important that companies have empathy and understand what their customers are going through. And an example is the drug that I work on was coming out with new data, and were used for a type of nephrotic syndrome. I won't get into the technicalities of it, but the new data was for patients that after you have a kidney transplant and you develop this type of nephrotic syndrome, our drug would now be able to be used for those patients as well. So at this point, my company had no insights into what it was like to even have a kidney transplant. So what we did was we went out and we spoke to patients, and we did ethnography work. We spent 2 hours in their homes listening to their journey about having this condition and what events worked up to having the transplant and what life was like after having a transplant. And it completely opened our eyes. And as I said, our company has a great patient support program. So we were getting really great ideas on how we can further support these patients with the offerings that we have. So it was such a great experience. But my point is that we didn't walk out of that research and said, oh, we can do this and we could do this and we could do this. I mean, it was just really having a better understanding of how these patients are, having greater empathy for them, and then being able to take all that and package it up and share it with the sales team at the national sales meeting. So how do we get the sales folks better prepared to talk to these physicians about patients that have transplants, so kidney transplant? So I'm not sure if I answered your question directly, but it's a little bit.
No, it's good. It's
another perspective.
I think the follow-up to that, though, is, sort of a deep contextual inquiry, ethnographic sort of like research study. Like, I'm sure there are a lot of us on this call who'd be like, yes, please. Like, where's my budget? I got people to talk to. I got things to do. I think, and I'm trying to keep it sort of honest to the advocating for UX in a large organization. And so when we think about advocating, it's how do I get that in the first place? Like, how am I turning the corner? Some of it is, senior leadership champions. Some of it is, budget. Some of it is organization. I think it's selling in that idea that a lot of, our constituents here are struggling with how to make that argument, how to, get into doing those things. So I'm kind of curious to sort of expand on that a little bit. It sounds like you've got a great organization that really values that, and rightly so. It's how do we get there, right?
So one thing I want to just add to what you were just talking about is you need to bring the right people on that journey with you. So it's just not myself and my small team going on those interviews. So
sure.
we brought VPs with us. So they shared that in that experience. And I don't know if any of you have ever had the opportunity to be in the home of a patient and talk to them about their journey, but it's very emotional and it just opens your eyes. And to have VPs on that journey with you and now sharing it throughout the organization, it's really, really energizing. And to this day, I still think about the patients that I've had the opportunity to meet and listen to their stories. And I hope they're all doing well, but it's just something that you're never going to forget. So, but my point being is bringing the right people on that journey with you is critical. So making sure
co-opt the VP to advocate for UX in the organization for you. No, and that's a great insight.
Yeah, and I wonder, and you know, Niketa is a champion of this. Just because we've worked together so closely, you know, how easy is it for you guys to get when you sort of have your results? How easy is it to get buy-in when you do like a readout of the results to pull that VP level person in or the C level person and really get them to listen? So again, I'll throw it out to Niketa first, and then the rest of you guys.
Honestly, to get the buy-in from C-level people, you got 10 minutes. That's all you get. So you have to pitch this in 10 minutes. What the C-level are looking for in those 10 minutes is not only what the content you're presenting, but how you're presenting it and who you are as a person. Because they, at the end of the day, they need to trust you because they are going to hand over the money to you. So I think in that 10 minutes, the best way to convince any C-level is to talk. And first of all, you have to understand what his values are and where he or she is coming from. And if you can actually tie in your ask along with that, with the values he represents, would be in first check, and it would be an easy, at least the conversation will start going. And at the end of the day, it's the C-level has a very short attention span, and they will potentially maybe not look at your 30 slides. They will probably look at 2, but they do expect those 30 slides. They will review it at the end of the day. They will expect that you've done your due diligence into the business case you're presenting in front of them, because they will pick apart anything, like any question, and you should be ready to answer those questions. So there is that level of trust which you have to establish with C-level in order to get any type of buy-in. And once you have that, then the rest becomes easier to ask for, hey, I want 5 researchers, or I want 3 designers, or I want an external agency to work with me. So make your presentation very short. Even 1 slide works. Bluff slide, we call it, bottom line up front. And make it short and sweet, but make sure you do your homework and you have all the data to back all of your decisions with.
Yeah, I love that acronym, the BLUFF.
I know. I love that.
I've not heard of that before. So that's I always tell people I learn something new. I've been doing this for a long time. I learn something new every time we do an event. So that's great. Vicente, share your thoughts on the same topic.
Yeah, well, I don't know if I can add anything. I think that was a pretty complete answer. That was spot on.
You got a top bluff. I mean, that's yeah.
Well, I mean, I think it's true. You don't know. You may think you're going in with X amount of time, but you're not necessarily. That could change like that. So you do need to know what is the key point you're trying to make, and be ready with those backups. So yeah, I mean, seriously, I don't know what to add. I think I'm just what you just said.
Let me ask you just a quick follow-up, Vicente, and then Andrea as well. So both of you guys have worked. The other dynamic that comes into play sometimes is adding to the complex organization is you have an agency there. And you know, I've been there on both sides where it's just build it. We don't have time to do any research. You know, we have a budget, and you know, the way agencies make money is they charge you per person who's on the project. So there's a natural push to get more people on the project, but you still have to do it on time. What have you guys seen in terms of either the ease or difficulty of bringing the agencies on board to advocate for UX, you know, and research? Because again, I've been doing this a long time. It used to be you could not. I was at an agency and we couldn't convince people to do research within our own agency. and it was really hard. You had to make a case for it. I think it's become easier, but I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I have a perfect example. I'm kind of living through this right now. So the product that I work on is indicated across multiple specialties, and now our new strategy is it's going to be one team instead of 5 different marketing teams or one marketing team. So now we have to change the website because we're going to have one website across 5 different specialties and multiple indications. And I was talking to my marketing director. I'm like, okay, well, we got to do usability research for the website because we've never did this before. And the agency is pushing back saying, no, we've done this so much. We have enough insights. We know how to create a website. So they pushed and said, we don't need to do market research. But then I took my marketing director aside and said, listen, you're going to have to test it at some point. So we put it into the 2021 budget to do usability testing after they create it and roll it out. So at least I got, you know, we kind of negotiated there, but it's difficult because, like you said, Lon, you know, sometimes the agencies have their own agendas and they don't necessarily align with other folks on the client side. So, but at least we're going to end up doing research and we have budget to do it for next year.
So, Lon, I think you're the echo king over there. There you go. I think it's a matter of seeing kind of right sizing for the opportunity. I think what Andrea described is a great way to make sure that it gets done. So ideally you go into it with that information, but if that's not possible, I think that's really smart to get it in there and understand that you're going to learn something from that, and you're going to have to make some changes. We work on both the J&J, the CVS, Medco, you know, a lot of places, but the difference maybe are where an agency and an in-house team, and I say in-house with pride and like real pride in what that means in terms of what we take on, because most of my career has been in-house. So it's not an ego trip. I actually mean this because I know the difficulties of it. You know, you have many digital products, many digital experiences that you're supporting. So you don't design for the quick hit and get out. You're actually bringing something to life that you need to nurture, you need to guide, and you don't want it to fail, but sometimes you also need to make the decision to pivot away, but you're responsible for that. So as an in-house team, designer, researcher, you're looking, you need to understand what you're delivering, where it's going to go, and design it in a way that is scalable, that you can optimize, right? There's all this ongoing learning that needs to take place. And that is often the big divide, and it's not putting agencies down because there's just so much talent out there. It's really how can you leverage the best of both worlds? So if you can bring an agency in to partner with the internal team, it's got to be with the right understanding of how this is going to work out. It's not throwing stuff over the wall. You know, you're going to have every kind of situation, but I think that you know, bringing in the research and understanding what do we already know? Do we have enough to get going? Do we need to go deeper? Can something happen in parallel? How agile are we going to be? Are we going out with an MVP? Like all these things need to figure into the decisions that you make. And if you're working with an internal partner that's maybe has a relationship with an agency, they're going to come in one way or the other. In that case, it may be actually an opportunity. You can kill 2 birds with 1 stone. You want to make sure that you don't want your company to be building something that you know doesn't have much life ahead of it, even though it looks amazing, right? So I want to make sure that my company is getting the money's worth. I can partner with whoever's hiring the agency if it's not coming through us, and help guide, you know, let me review stuff with you, right? Don't cut me totally out. If you can afford to do some of that, if you can help guide the research and shape some of that, that's another way to make sure that in the end, you know, you're going to have to now nurture that baby that was built. So I want to make sure it comes, you know, it's in good shape. So that's just another way to, again, it feels like a lot of the conversations we're having is there is no, you know, A plus B equals C. It's pushing, it's shaping, it's finding the right thing, opportunities, go for it, you know, set your sights out there and then, you know, look at that North Star. That's where you're headed. So you get there in multiple ways. That's what I'm hearing from everyone here. Thank you.
No, that makes a lot of sense. You know, one of the questions that I had put together was thinking, and you know, I was inspired from another event where they were talking about the ability to run, you know, quote unquote, like UX experiments, and it was, you know, the idea around someone, you know, a higher up comes up with a great idea, or a whole bunch of customers start crowing and saying, we need this new thing now. And everyone gets all excited. And all of a sudden you spend, you know, 6 months building something. And then the next thing comes up and they say, oh no, we need this now. And everyone forgets about the thing that you were spending 6 months building. Tell me about any experiences with that and how, you know, it can be reversed, where you have a senior level or C-level person advocating for something that doesn't necessarily make a whole lot of sense, or that is taking too much time to actually develop. So, any thoughts about that dilemma from the other side?
I can start. I think, I guess I've been in both situations where you know, the senior leadership is asking for something which is, we don't know if it's going to be successful, right? There is no revenue target to that. There is no business case to that. How do I tie in my UX business case to a business case which doesn't exist? It's a question mark. So it puts you in a tough spot because it's been asked by your leaders and you don't have a very good tangible way of saying no either, because you don't know yet, right? I think it's you can't say no or a yes, because you need to validate them. And I think the best way to validate is rapid prototyping. Do a quick rapid prototype on the assumptions given to you by the senior leader that this is potentially a concept which could work. Once you do rapid prototype, take it out in the market, spin it out, get some quotes, get some videos to show whether it's working or not working, but ensure that you're not only talking to 1 or 2 customers, but more than 10, so that you get some statistically significant number to represent, to say, here you go, this is what we feel. I mean, we just recently did a research, and we only tested with like 6 customers, and that research wasn't valid enough because it was only 6 customers. And in the eyes of the audience, it's like, well, it was only 6 customers, so we don't know. So then we went and we did with, you know, another 15 more to make sure that we are actually suggesting the right way. So I think that it's usually people in the senior leadership, sometimes those ideas are not wrong, they are actually right, but also they need to understand that the execution may take longer. So you need to get engineering involved in those discussions as well, to make sure that cross-functional teams are involved. So it's not about a CEO is asking UX to just like go in the mountains and build something out of nothing. You have to have cross-functional team buy-in, because even if UX comes up with an amazing idea, if that's not going to get executed, I don't know what the CEO is going to gain out of it. So I think it comes down to ensuring that UX can actually bring in, again, database decisions back to the table and asking, and then funding that eventually. So there is a product discovery phase, and every product should have that. Every company should have a product discovery phase. I do agree with that completely. Or not every idea needs a product discovery, because some of the ideas are so ridiculous that you really don't need to think about it too much about it. But some of the ideas you do need product discovery, and there should be enough time given to cross-functional team to ensure that they have that time to experiment. Sometimes in the organization, they think that experiment is the way to go, and they one experiment equals that is the final requirement. Let's move forward. And that is also a failed strategy where it does not work when you actually experiment something and you say, well, this is, and they assume this is it. But no, wait, validation is still needed. So I think that again, database decisions, rapid prototype, and make sure you validate.
I can give an example of this. When I worked at J&J, believe it or not, I was working on a drug for schizophrenia. And when I joined the company, I inherited this project, which was a physician segmentation study. And if for those of you that are not familiar with segmentation is, we would classify physicians into different groups, and depending on which groups they fall into, we would maybe message to them differently. So this was a physician segmentation study, and it came from somebody from the marketing team that had since left the team. I think they even left the organization. So now I take on the market research part of it, and I kid you not, I spent a year on the segmentation project. It took a lot of my time. And one of the key things with a segmentation study is you want a short typing tool, and the typing tool are those key questions that will help you identify if your patient or your physician is in one segment versus another. So I was so proud. I got the typing tool down to 3 questions, which was really simple, because if the field, we had to be able to type all of our customers and put them into a group, a segment. And in order to do that, you have to have your sales force to be able to ask the questions to the physicians so we could classify them into the right segments. So after a year of this, I sold it up the chain until I got to the head of the brand, VP of the entire CNS franchise. I had to talk to him and convince him. And he was new too. So he joined the team like halfway through my first year working on this product. So I feel really confident. I had a one-on-one with him, and I'm presenting to him. And at the end of the day, he's like, I don't want my sales reps to be asking these questions to segment. I want them to sell. So I basically got shut down of something that wasn't even my idea. It was somebody's idea that was, on the marketing team that thought it was the best idea. We need to segment, and I inherited it. And here I just wasted a year and a ton of money, and I hit a wall. So what we did was we used that segmentation for market research purposes, and even within the marketing team, in talking about our customers in different ways, but it never got used the way it was designed to. And it's just another example of, when people leave the organization, they start things and then they leave, and then other people inherit it, and then it just you're turning your wheels for nothing at the end of the day. It's very frustrating.
Yeah, it can be frustrating. I mean, I can tell you from my perspective, we've done research projects where we get brought in, and it's just to do the research, and at the end of it, and I would say that this is very rare, but we've had 1 or 2 projects where people they don't even want to read what happened because they were heading in the direction anyway, and they were just checking off the box, yes, to do research. So it can be frustrating. Again, that's where these complex organizations come into play, where and as sort of the independent research person, sometimes you don't know what people's agendas are, and it's sort of like, okay, I got hired to do this, let me do this, and not poke around too much, because that's not your job. Your job is to get the research done and give people the findings that they need to point themselves in a particular direction. So we're at about, it's on the East Coast, it's about 10 after 8. Chicago is about 10 after 7. So I want to have some time to open it up for some questions from our participants. So feel free to, if you do have a question for our panel, feel free to unmute yourself. You can turn your camera on so we can see who you are and see your smiling face. And feel free to chime in with a question or two. and hopefully we have someone who's brave enough to be the first questioner.
I'll put it in the chat. Juan, I think we answered everything.
You may have. We could have solved all the world's problems in an hour. I want to get maybe a sense of, if folks are maybe, and again, feel free to chime in. I know, we usually have some DePaul students that join us. Questions about maybe getting into a larger organization to do UX. So if anyone has any questions about that, that's great as well. And if if no one has any questions, we can kind of go around the horn and see who's hiring and get to that. Oh, we have Jock Harper. Jock with a question.
Hey, yeah, thanks everybody for this. Would love to hear you talk a little bit about how you address getting to actual users when the company feels like sort of sensitive about letting you talk to clients, letting you talk to customers. That's, to me, is a sort of a continual challenge. Like, oh, that's a very special relationship, or we're having some trouble with that. We don't want you to talk to them. You could talk to one of our salespeople; they know everything. But how do you get around that? Because it's sort of a constant problem, I find.
They don't give you access to the user, you ask for money. So you can hire an external user and get your research done. And that's one way.
Interesting.
Yeah, so at GE Healthcare, what we used to have is very specialized user like a radiologist, right? And it's always hard to find radiologist time as they charge $500 an hour. So it's very hard for us to get them. And when we do get them, as you said, salespeople, account executives, they're like, don't talk to them. We are in the middle of the deal. We cannot afford to have them blow up. If they see something they like, they're going to ask us about when this is going to be released in the product, and we can't answer them. So please stay away from my customer. So the other method, what we did is we said, we hired a third-party agency to say, well, get us a radiologist. And there are radiologists who would actually do this as a part-time, and we just paid this external agency because GE Healthcare was a regulatory industry too, right? So we had to do it, and if you don't do it, your product do not get released, period. So there was a benefit for organization to fund this kind of a budget where we had to get 15, 16 participants from outside, and then we ran the test that way.
Yeah, that can be a great strategy where you sort of, you kind of circumvent the bureaucracy, and you do a couple of interviews with people who have the same profile as your existing customer, but they might not be a customer yet. So at least you have a little bit of ammunition to say, look, we interviewed, 8, 9, 10 people, and here's some findings, here are some video clips. I think that's one of the things also that I've found, big picture here of advocating for UX and especially UX research, is that when you can show even 3 or 4 good video clips, it hits a home run. And it's so easy these days to sort of clip kind of the best of a few interviews. So, it could be as easy as sort of, and as Niketa explained, kind of circumventing, going around the typical customer, saying, here's someone who's exactly like our existing customer, listening to them, and as Andrea explained, just sharing that audio tape, video tape, it can go a long way to making your case with, with senior level folks, and even colleagues who may be skeptical of, again, when I started doing this, I remember getting questions, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. People would say to me, well, how can you come up with findings? You're only interviewing 10 people. And there was a back and forth and a debate. And, we got hired, J&J hired us to do, 42 interviews one time. And I was like, I had to talk them out of it. I mean, this is money coming out of my company's pocket, but I said, guys, you don't need 42 interviews. And you know, at the end of the day, the folks who were, once they got it, they were like, okay, now we see why. You know, in 8 interviews with the same, you know, target audience, you can get there. So hopefully, Jacques, that answered your question. I think that
it's a nice problem to have, Lon, to have too many interviews.
Exactly.
I just want to add one thing. Sometimes you can get your answers through blinding. So in market research, we can't know who the participants are, and they can't know who we are. However, depending on what what stimuli you're sharing with them, they can tell who it is or get a good idea. So in some cases, if we want to address certain sensitive issues, we'll blind it. So we'll say product X. So we won't say our name. Or maybe you don't talk to the patient, but you'll talk to a caregiver and get around the sensitive issue a different way. So in some cases, depending what the business question is, sometimes you can get there through other means and by blinding it or talking to different stakeholders, not your typical stakeholder that you're sensitive towards.
Yeah, nice. All right, thanks.
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have someone who posted a question on chat, and I'll read it out because I think it's a great question. What are some of the ideas in terms of how to build trust when joining a new organization, given our remote environment? I think that's a great question. So thanks for that.
I just joined an organization recently, so I definitely have to say it's not easy, right? I do have an advice, which is like 3-step process. It's literally a 3-step process. You have to do the good work, make sure you're good at what you do, and you focus on doing the good work. You need to ensure that you look good as well. So when I say look good, it means that make sure that your work is being seen by others and you are being seen by others, and make sure that it's not about bragging or it's not about showing off, but you do need to show off a little bit. That's you have to show what you're good at, you have to show and what your team is doing, and you have to push your team members to show what they have been doing. So that's like number 2 step. And the 3rd step is connect better, right? Connecting with cross-functional teams, connecting with other folks within the company, making sure you're participating in the events they're hosting or being seen by others is also very networking. I think that's the word I was looking for. Network within the organization to ensure that you're building that trust. UX is a funny kind of an industry where it takes a while for someone to trust, like because they don't even know to begin with what UX is, right? Sometimes they don't know, and so that's like, what is UX again? Is it UI? Is it just the visual design? And it's hard to build that trust, but I think that slowly but steadily you will get there. It's a matter of doing better, looking better, and connecting better.
So building relationships and then building trust are hopefully they go hand in hand, but sometimes people build relationships and they completely trash the trust part of it. They forget about that because they're not doing some of those things. But I think there's an opportunity when you're new to an organization, you do come in with a little bit of a halo, unless you were brought into an uncomfortable situation, which sometimes happens. You may be replacing someone that was very popular, or who knows what's happening. But let's just say you come in with your halo. There's a reason why they wanted you to be part of that organization. Look, depending on how big the team is, I think you should make it that effort to just set up a bunch of one-on-ones. Maybe talk to your hiring manager and like, who should I be talking to, just to begin to establish kind of, jump ahead, your cliff notes, right? And why should I meet some of these people? But then also do those other conversations that might be people that seem to have a common interest with you, which you should be able to get that out. if there are at Johnson & Johnson, they have employee resource groups. So if they're kind of affinity groups, employee groups within the organization, that could also be a great place for a support team. So I'm part of the Hispanic Association, and I do some other projects with people of color and the ADA, and because accessibility is a big passion of mine as well. So there are all these different ways of getting involved too. So see where you can find some like conversations, and even if it's not relevant to your specific role, but those are the kind of relationships that could actually come back as people know people. And the other thing is just one, I had been at Medco pretty much most of my career, over 20 years. Then I went to CVS. I was there for 3 years, and now at J&J 4 years. My experience being in one company for a long time, maybe I don't know, at certain points during that journey, probably staying too long, and then other times, but you cut a plateau and then you go up, and there are all these new challenges. So you can have a whole career within one organization. But when you go to a new place that's been around as a company with a 130-year history, there are people that have been there longer than I was at Medco. People for 40 years, 50 years. I mean, it's insane. So I'm just a baby there, okay? But you've got to find out what is it, talk to the people that have been there a long time, respect the fact that the reason this company's around is because all these people have put so much effort into it. So I may be coming in with a new perspective, and that could rub some people the wrong way, that it's I'm bringing outside talent in. You've got to, knowing what it's like to be on the inside, yes, you acknowledge that there's certain things you may not be doing right, and maybe you learn from a competitor or other industries. So respect the team that you're going into, even as you're trying to also bring a fresh perspective, fresh skills, all of that. So that's another way to build that trust. Don't come in as the one that says, I'm gonna solve everything. You guys don't know what you're talking about. There's history there. You gotta, appreciate that. It's a reason you have that opportunity.
Yep.
I'm going to just build on what you were saying, because I agree with everything that Vicente just said. And I've been on the flip side. So a new person joined the organization a few weeks ago, and he set up a one-on-one with me, and we got to talking, and we actually worked on the same product. He was at BMS and I was at Sanofi, and we were both working on the same product. So we knew some of the same people. But the point I wanted to make was, don't be afraid to talk about your personal things. Not every conversation has to be about work, because what you're going to do is, once you start talking about, family, kids, where'd you grow up, one thing leads to another, and then you start to form a relationship, and that relationship then turns into trust when you're in other meetings and talking about other topics for work. So don't be afraid to talk about things outside of work, because to me, that's how I had developed a lot of relationships at work. Because listen, at the end of the day, work is work, and you don't always want to talk about work. But it's the personal things that really get you engaged with your colleagues, and you guys can connect on. Or if you do want to keep it from, on a work subject, ask how things about their career, because people love talking about their careers and how they got to their current role and where they came from. People love that. So I think just by asking the right questions, you can form that relationship and build trust from a remote environment.
Yeah, those were all fantastic pieces of advice. So very much appreciated. Because it is hard, especially now where, everyone's digital. So, how do you make those connections? I think, if anything to add, it's, take a look. I mean, some of the easy things are maybe go on LinkedIn and take a look at, the people you're working with and see if you have a connection in common. Because that's a starter for a conversation that may be, you know, about career, about something that's off, you know, off of a work topic. So all those things are ways to, you know, to build trust, you know, on top of just staying focused on delivering, you know, at a high quality, which is, you know, that's kind of what people are going to look at first. All the rest of it's, hey, you can be the nicest person in the world, but if you can't deliver the goods, it's going to catch up with you. So, so any other questions that we have? If someone wants to jump in. And if not, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask folks to chime in if you are looking to, if your organization is looking to hire someone, let us know. And maybe, Niketa, I can start off with you because I know that you guys are looking for a couple of people. So Niketa, why don't you start us off and tell us who you're looking for?
I think someone unmuted to ask a question. If anybody has a question, feel free to unmute.
Hi, my name's Sarah. This is the first time I've attended. I was invited by a friend, and thank you. This has been delightful. Just hearing you guys share stories that I can relate to and help feel I'm not alone out there in this endeavor. One question I had is, do you have any tips for, so I'm a researcher. My background is broader customer research and ethnography. I've done things similar to what Andrea has mentioned. I'm now in a UX role, very focused on our website redesign and our digital tools. And I'm running into some leaders who just don't feel we need research and feel like they know what should be done and there's best practices out there and we should just follow those best practices, and they themselves are customers so they know what it's like. And what are some tips or advice or experiences you all have around that?
I would say keep at it. Keep doing what you're doing, because I think that sooner or later they are going to see the value in it. I think that there's a tactical way of handling this and there is a strategic way of handling this. One is that the more tactical is you need to be doing what you need to be doing and continue at it, continue to show the value, and the strategic way of connecting with the right people and having some champions in your organization who can actually say, well, because of Sarah's research, we found this and we did this and this is the decision we made. I think that you need to find some allies. I think, Vicente, you previously mentioned finding allies in the organization. Those are some of the strategic way you can actually get buy-in into the research. I think I do believe some people do have some mental model. Oh, we have done enough research. Why are we spending more time on it? There's another way to look at this, and there's another way to show them this is called validation. We're not necessarily doing a discovery, we are doing a validation, because what we want to do is we want to save money for engineering so that they don't go the wrong path. This is why we need to do validation research and not necessarily discovery research, because some people's mind, it's always about, when we say research, they think about those hefty price tag which comes along with the discovery research, which you pay a third-party research company, right? Like you pay like $500,000, and that there is that mental block they have towards research. So instead of calling it research, you can also call it a validation testing, which you need it so that engineering don't have to go in the rabbit hole and build something and it's going to cost you higher later on. So definitely that way you can strategize it better, and definitely tactical way you can continue to do what you've been doing and continue to show the data and make it, data-based decisions.
Thank you. That was good. I appreciate that. Thanks.
Yep, I was going to say I agree with everything Niketa said. It's really important to have advocates that are talking the same story you are to the right people. And I was recently, so where I work, budgets are really tight, and we did a demand study, which was it was a quantitative study, so there's a couple hundred physicians in the study. but it was across different specialties. So once you start cutting down the sample, you don't have that many, you don't have that much sample. So we had users and non-users. And in the research, there was, in a small sample of non-users, there was an insight that I identified. And I said, you know, I'd really like to validate this because this could create a great opportunity for non-users and how we can communicate with them. Because they were saying basically that, you know, they don't see a rep, they're unfamiliar with our information, but if they learned about the studies, they'd be more interested in perhaps trying our product. So I convinced them, and I got, you know, $30,000–$40,000 to do a quant study to validate this. And now I'm going to, and sometimes, you know, there's ways to get around and cut the price. So I'm not paying a vendor to give me a full, clean, pretty report. I just said, I just need the data tables and I can create the report myself. And that's what I'm going to do. So now I can hopefully validate the theory that I saw in this demand study through this quantitative study, and hopefully they can, it'll identify opportunities how we can reach non-users in different ways, actually through digital means. So cross your fingers.
Hi, my name is Renu, and I had a question. This is actually a great session. I was connected to Lon, and that is how I am here for this session. I am enjoying it thoroughly. Great discussion. Hi, Lon, by the way. I cannot turn my camera on because I mean, I'm moving and my house is like kind of in a bad situation right now. So, so the question I had is, I come from a PhD background. I have a PhD in design with focus on anthropological research practices. And after being in academia for a long time, last year I started working in the industry. So recently I started a couple of positions, one as a research lead and other is as an innovation strategist, both with the consultancy firms, and these both are healthcare projects. So my question is, I love to do contracting work. I want to work on variety of projects. I want to work on variety of topics, and maybe that is one thing that is bringing me to the consultancy projects. So when you work in the contracting environment, and especially right now in the remote situation, the projects are 3 or 4 months long. We are a team all spread across all the United States, and I have never met them personally. So there is this question somebody asked about building a trust. So when in this situation, when you want to do a contracting work, you're working remotely, how do you develop trust and relationships with your colleagues? Because I think that really contributes positively to the output of any project. That was my question.
I'm sure Lon can actually answer this one.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think that you know, a lot of the things that we talked about still apply, and I think, you know, I think it's kind of just raising your hand and saying, you know, hey, include me in, you know, group emails. Or depending on what, even if you're freelancing, and again, Niketa can attest to this, is that, you know, we're doing a project right now, and you know, I'm sort of the outside person, but, you know, I have an email at the company, I can be on Teams, I can chat with people, and that's helping me get a handle on what, you know, for me is a complex set of challenges for topics that I'm not an expert on. And that's fairly new to me. So reaching out to these people, and just also being on, you know, give an example, you know, from today. And again, you know, I'm not full time at this company at all, but I listened into the CEO's sort of monthly call this morning. And, you know, after an hour, I was like, this is great, because you get a little context in terms of understanding where the company is headed. You realize that the guy who's the CEO is just super enthusiastic, super smart. It gets you excited, but getting that bigger perspective can help also. in the side conversations that you might have with the people who you're working with directly. So again, just as some of the other suggestions that people had, engage with people. I think one of the other ways is just even inviting, if you have a great event to go to, invite them to a webinar event. Say, hey, did you hear about this event on Meetup? And invite them to go. Just, again, that trust gets built over time. Even if you're working with someone for a month-long project, you want to stay in touch. And again, I think that the LinkedIn example I gave as well, is helpful because you can see if you have people in common, and that's just a good starter for a conversation.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. Great suggestion.
Anyone else with a question?
Lon, you went on.
Well, let's get to our organization is hiring phase. So Niketa, why don't you start us off?
Yes, we are hiring. I'm pasting the link to the career page on the chat. I'm looking for visual designers, especially senior manager level visual design managers, so that they can come in and build my team of visual design. And I'm looking for researchers as well, full-time. I'm looking for senior user experience researcher to come in. We have a ton of work for them. And I'm building out a team, and starting 2021, I will have more positions open. For now, I have these 2 positions. We just filled up interaction designer positions, 2 of them, which is great. Starting 2021, I will be looking to develop a design ops in the organization, so design operations, as well as more hiring on visual design and research. So those are the 4 disciplines. We have interaction design, visual design, research, and design ops. So we'll be looking into all of those positions next year. Right now I have 2 open, so anyone interested, please either you can go to this link and apply, or just send me a LinkedIn connection and I'll connect you with the recruiter. Thank you.
Great. Anyone else? Sort of feel free to chime in and tell us about your organization. And Vicente, are you guys hiring?
Not full time right now. We have a core team of full-time employees. We work with contractors. We use the WorkSense platform, so there are all sorts of vendors that are in there, as well as Upwork for freelance. And so that, we look at that we might actually be posting something for UX, UI, a combination working within a small team on a project for this year. So but that's the way it goes. And then next year we'll see. The team has been growing over the last 4 years. So we're about 25 to 30 something people, depending on the on which way the wind blows and how things are going. But that's the way we staff up. And I think you had a question earlier about how do you break into some of these big companies? Sometimes it's not through the full-time job opportunities. They do come up, but actually a lot of the people on our team started off as contractors, and they stayed with us, and we converted them, and that's been a great way to enter into a team. And you also get to see what a team is like, and if you like the environment as well. So that's been actually a great way to come into a team.
Great. I know some of just some of my colleagues who are based in Chicago. So I know GE Healthcare is hiring. I know folks at Walgreens are looking for people, and Allstate as well. All those are some of the big giant companies based in Chicago. They're all hanging in there and really growing their digital teams.
So if anybody interested in GE Healthcare, just let me know. I have the hiring manager connection there, so I can connect you there.
And I believe, shout out to my old company as well, CVS, I believe, from time to time posts things. And I know they're based in Rhode Island. They've got a team in Boston, but there's also, as I said earlier, people in Northbrook. So, and I, you know, by the way, this new situation also opens up virtual, like you don't, I mean, my team right now is spread all over the place. Like, I'm not sure how many people are left in New York. They're all over the country and in the world as well. So, you know, that those might be opportunities as well. You don't have to confine yourself to your town.
All right, great. Well, if there are no other questions or folks that are looking to hire, this has been a great discussion. So, you know, I really appreciate, obviously, our fantastic panelists, and appreciate the ongoing support for, you know, for the IXDA. At some point, hopefully in a couple of months, we'll be back to doing some in-person events. But until then, we should have a couple of events teed up for probably our next event might be either late November or we're thinking early January at this point, because I know December gets nuts for everyone, and they, you know, it is tough to jump on these events in December. But again, thanks so much for everyone's participation. We really appreciate it. Have a great night, and we will look forward to connecting again in the coming weeks to talk more about the exciting field of UX.
Thanks, Lon. Thanks,
Right,
everyone.
thank you.
Andrea,
Thanks again, guys. Really
Thanks,
appreciate
everyone.
it.
thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
A lot of fun. Thanks a lot, Lon.